What's going on, football fans? Diggs Report here with my friend Sam, and we are going to go over the top five quarterbacks in the 2022 class. Now, we know it's not the greatest class in the world for quarterback talent, but hey, you still got some talented players in here.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to put it. We were talking a little bit earlier. This does have a lot of similarities to the 2013 draft where EJ Manuel went 16th overall to the Bills, and that was the only quarterback taken. Quarterback is still the most important position, so it's still really important to go through the report and see what's out there because there still is some talent. There's players who can go in the second round, third round, who can be contributors. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here, ready to get started.
All right. First things first. Are we going Malik Willis or are we going Kenny Pickett first in this draft, the first quarterback in this draft?
Yeah, so I like Malik Willis first out of the five, just because I think when teams are looking for um, someone who's not necessarily ready to go day number one, ceiling is a little bit more important than floor, and I think Malik Willis has the absolute highest ceiling out of all of these. I think Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett, both of them I think can be quality starters for teams. But I think Malik Willis's athleticism, his cannon of an arm, uh, his his ability to play quarterback, I think he's the best in terms of potential growth. Whereas Kenny Pickett, I don't feel like has as high of a ceiling, but does have that higher floor. So I feel like teams are going to value that ceiling with Malik Willis.
Yeah, especially with this draft where there's no Trevor Lawrence, there's no like Trey Lance or Zach Wilson. And when you're talking about a quarterback class like this, teams are going to want to go with a higher ceiling than a higher floor. And I think it's fair to put Malik Willis there. And Kenny Pickett number two, I have no problem with that. I think Kenny Pickett, out of all these quarterbacks, has the best chance to be a day one starter. And I put it a 50-50 chance that he is a day one starter, which for this class, that's not a bad thing. And you're talking about Willis with his athleticism, and he kind of looks like a linebacker sometimes when he's on the field, which that's not a bad thing when you're a quarterback, especially in today's league. And the only question that you're really going to have is when he is a starter, is he going to try to make plays a little too often and get hurt too often? That's a balance that he has to find. And some quarterbacks find it, some quarterbacks don't, but there's always risk to that. And if it works out, then you're going to get a guy that I think has all pro potential. And with Kenny Pickett number two, I think you're going to get a guy that could be the rookie of the year and could be a solid starter for 10 years. So with these two quarterbacks, I think close to guarantee first round picks. I just don't think they're top 10 picks, maybe not top 15 picks, but I think you could get two very solid starters out of these two quarterbacks.
Right. I think you're bringing up some great points. Neither quarterback, in my mind, is the top 15 talent, whereas they deserve to go in the top 15. But quarterback is the absolute most valuable position. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them go top 10, two of them go top 15. Definitely, I think both of them are probably going to go top 20. Um, but when it comes to Malik Willis, I think his what he brings to the table with his arm strength, watching his pro day, some of those throws he can make. And I'll be fair, we'll put an asterisk on the throws at pro days because it's not it's without pads, it's all scripted. So you can really kind of highlight your strengths while trying to minimize your weaknesses. But even in the game tape, I mean, when you watch him play, he does a great job moving the ball. He gets himself into trouble when he tries to go off script, which is the biggest thing. Is usually when you see quarterbacks trying to escape the pass rush, they try to put themselves in better positions. But with Malik Willis, he tries to let his athleticism take over too much, and he puts himself in horrible situations, which sets him up for failure. But he does have that ability to use athleticism to move around. So even though the results are not good, he has traits that you can project into other situations that with coaching and experience, he can be more successful. He came from Auburn, transferred from Auburn to Liberty, which, I mean, Liberty is a good small school program, but it's still a small school. So once he gets to the NFL, he's going to have different coaching, different experience in general. So I think he has a lot of ability to project well to being a good quarterback. And then Kenny Pickett, I saw this comparison for Kenny Pickett, and I think I really like it. I see Kenny Pickett being compared to Ryan Tannehill, and I think that fits really well. And when I watch him play, he doesn't have a top arm strength, but neither did Ryan Tannehill. But he has accuracy. He can move the ball. He can sail it deep. Hand size, in my mind, is overrated. I don't think that's too big of a concern.
He's got
He's
sneaky
athletic.
athleticism, if you ask me.
I think sneaky athleticism. I think he's an athletic quarterback. I don't think there's anything sneaky about it. He's not Malik Willis, but he's an athletic quarterback. And again, I think out of all of the quarterbacks, he's most likely to be a day one starter. I think Malik Willis is probably going to be on the bench regardless of where he goes, unless it's an absolute dumpster fire situation. Cough, cough, Panthers, who have no other quarterback. I mean, we can talk about that later, but Kenny Pickett, I think, is the most likely to be a day one starter.
Yeah, and to finish this up with me, even though we're talking about how strong of an arm Malik Willis has, Kenny Pickett's got a pretty good arm as well. He's got an above average arm. He's got an arm that you want as an NFL quarterback. And I said sneaky athleticism. It's because he's a drop back passer. You don't expect him to be as athletic as Kenny Pickett is. He can take off and run at any point. I mean, I think the fake slide showed off his athleticism very well, which is an illegal play now. Nobody can do that, but
right.
Still, that just shows off his athleticism. And again, with Malik Willis, I said it is a little bit of a risk, but hey, sometimes at the quarterback position, you got to take a risk. I mean, the Titans, or at the time, the Oilers took a risk with Steve McNair. Look how well that turned out. The Ravens took a risk with both Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. Look how that turned out. So sometimes you just got to take a risk, and it's always a risk. So don't be concerned about it. And if Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett go to the right teams, which they absolutely could, I think both of them could be very, very solid quarterbacks at the very least.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it is situation dependent, but I think every draft pick, regardless of position, is situation dependent. So if they can definitely be good players, and I think out of all of the quarterbacks in this draft class, those are the two that I feel like will most deserve a second contract, however much that will be in 5 years and however long it'll be. I think those are probably the two that will most likely stick with whatever team that drafts them and has the best chance at being a franchise quarterback. Not saying they will, I'm saying they have the best chance at it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. All right, let's move on. Now, we differ on 3 and 4. So Sam has Matt Corral at 3. I have Desmond Ridder at 3. So, Sam, why don't you talk about Matt Corral, and I'll talk about Desmond Ridder.
Right. So I have Desmond Ridder as my number 4, but I think Matt Corral is, in my mind, he's a little bit more successful. Granted, it's an RPO system in college, but the system itself isn't a big deal. You want to see traits that you think will develop in the NFL. And he's a very athletic quarterback. I think he might be the second most athletic quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah,
if not second,
fair.
definitely third. He has a good arm. He has good touch on his accuracy. When it comes to this draft class, no quarterback is perfect. He definitely has his issues, but I think his physical traits are kind of what I look for. He doesn't necessarily translate as well as Desmond Ridder does. I know when you're looking at kind of projecting what traits work in the NFL, Desmond Ridder might be a little bit more comfortable for other people, but I think Matt he has more ceiling in my mind.
With Ridder, this guy is a winner. I mean, that's the number one thing to describe. He is a winner, and when it comes to the quarterback position, wins matter. I mean, it just does. And the fact is, what he did for Cincinnati, getting them to the college football playoff when people thought that was going to be impossible when this first started, it just goes to show you how much of a leader he was and how much he put that team on his back. So the quote unquote intangibles that coaches and scouts talk about definitely looks like he has them. Now, as his play on the field, I mean, he can throw it into tight windows. He's got a good arm. He's got good touch, pretty good accuracy, but it comes with a caveat. He needs a clean pocket. If he doesn't have a clean pocket, it can be erratic at times. And it's definitely not the best thing to have when you have a quarterback, because you're going to play quarterback in the NFL, you need to learn how to handle pressure. Now, can he learn how to handle pressure, or is he always going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Frazzled by it. Would you?
Right.
Yeah. So, and we're not going to know until he gets into the NFL. Some quarterbacks can, some quarterbacks can't. We don't know with him. But with Matt and Ritter, you could definitely see them being taken in the last few picks of the first round. But I think both of these guys are solid second round picks, guys that are not going to start right away. They're probably not going to start year one or year two. But if you want them for your future, then definitely take a chance on them, see how they develop. And we could definitely see these guys start in this league, or we could see them be career backups in this league. But either way, I think both these quarterbacks could be in the NFL for over a decade.
Right. I think that's fair to say. I think these guys, in terms of what to expect from them, I could imagine them in a similar situation that Davis Mills was in last year, where it was not necessarily a guy you're drafting to be the future, just someone a second, third, mid-round pick, day two kind of draft pick that can come in, and if they need to start, then they can start, and you can see what they have. And I can see these guys being as successful as Davis Mills was in the latter half of the season with the Texans. First half, it was a little bit rough, but he showed he's a quality quarterback in the NFL. So I think both of these guys have the ability to show that. When it comes to Desmond Ritter, my biggest concerns with him and why he falls to number 4 is so he doesn't have a weak arm per se, but his deep balls, they come up short when he throws them. It doesn't seem like he has zip to his throws when he's trying to hit those tight windows, and his accuracy isn't great coming into those spots. And the fact that he played at Cincinnati and then didn't play great competition, I think is harder to swallow, because then when you see him play Alabama and he does not have a good game, then it makes it a little bit tougher. Well, how is he going to play at much?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If he had a good game against Alabama, maybe that could take some of that concern away. But considering he didn't, but then again, Alabama shut down big time offenses all the time. So was that just another case of the Alabama defense stepping up, or is that just Ritter and that offense not being up to the task, or a little bit of both? Probably a little bit of both, but we don't know.
Right. And I agree with that, because it's, when you look at it, I mean, it's a sample size thing, right? Like Desmond Ritter played Alabama once and didn't have a good game, but Matt Corral, he could have had bad games against Alabama, but because he played other SEC teams who might not even have been that great and had decent games, it's like, well, this guy can play better against talent. It's just because he's played more games against better teams. So you don't really think about, oh, well, can he play against better talent, just because of the different situation. So it's kind of one of those that you have to take with a grain of salt, the competition level, because Desmond Ritter, just because he had that one game that was bad, I mean, doesn't mean that he's worse than Matt Corral just because he plays more against the SEC, because it's just a sample size thing.
Really, if you ask me, I just think it's going to depend on the team, because I could see Ritter going first. I could see Corral going first. It just depends on what type of quarterback they want. You want a more athletic guy, you're probably going to go with Matt Corral. If you want a guy that can be a leader, a guy that can help bring people up, you're probably going to go with Ritter. It just depends on who you want.
Right. And you know that the leadership aspect to it with Desmond Ritter is a great point because that's something that you're not able to see watching games and that kind of thing. So that might be something that's more valuable to some teams. And having that kind of guy in the locker room might just mean more than the athleticism maybe that you'd get from the other pick. So it depends on the situation again. It's kind of a cop out answer from us, but it depends on the situation. I think they're both good quarterbacks. I think again, they could be Davis Mills like quarterback where they're not drafted necessarily to be the future, but they can step up and give you some quality play if they need to be.
Now, our last quarterback, this is probably the last quarterback that we think could potentially be a starter in this league, and it's actually Sam Howell. So it has changed a little bit. We're going Sam Howell over Carson Strong. And with Sam Howell, right away, he became a very, very good quarterback in the ACC. In his freshman year, he threw for 38 touchdowns. Now, his numbers did drop a little bit between the sophomore and his junior year. However, I still feel like Sam Howell is going to be a guy that's going to be taking no later than the third round because this is somebody where at his worst, he's going to be one of the top backups in the NFL, in my opinion, because he doesn't do one thing terrific, but he does a lot of things well. And those guys, they last a long time in the league. I mean, you see that. Those kind of guys last a long time in the league. I don't care what kind of position you're in. But how? He's athletic. He throws a good ball. He's got a pretty good arm. Again, with what he did for North Carolina, I mean, right away with Mac Brown, they were successful. And I think Sam Howell played a big role in that. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think Sam Howell coming in with Mac Brown, that is what helped North Carolina get back to some form of relevance. And we'll see this year with Howell being gone, but I do feel like teams are going to want to maybe take a chance on Howell because they know at worst they're going to get a decent backup, which a decent backup in this league is hard to find sometimes.
Right. And speaking of decent backup, it's actually interesting that you bring that up because his comparison on NFL.com by Lance Zierlein, who did his scouting report, is Chase Daniel, which is the quintessential backup of the NFL. The NFL, he's been in the league for what, 10 years or something like that, has thrown 30 passes tops in his career, and he's still bouncing around between teams because he's such a quality backup. And I think that's a good way, a good projection for Sam Howell. I think he's closer to the tier 2 quarterbacks than the tier 3 quarterbacks. I mean, tier 1 obviously is going to be Willis and Pickett. Those are both first round guys. That tier 2 is second, third, maybe sneaks into the first with Desmond Ritter and Matt Corral. I think he's closer to Matt Corral and Desmond Ritter than he is to Billy Zapp and Carson Strong and those kind of guys. I think he's got a lot of things that I like about him. He has that athleticism. He has a good arm. He has pretty good accuracy. I like his ability to work within the pocket. You know, a lot of times when you're looking at these guys, like one of my things that I look for is how they move within the pocket because that's so important. You watch guys like Joe Burrow, who's able to seamlessly and effortlessly slide around in the pocket to get to a good position to make a throw. Sam Howell has some of those traits. I'm not saying he has the pocket awareness of Joe Burrow, but he is able to move in the pocket, keeps his guys downfield, and he's able to get the ball off. His technique isn't great. I think a lot of times he's trying to power the ball rather than use a whole body to get that throw off. But he does have athleticism. He can move off base and deliver a good pass. And then he does have the ability to run. So, I mean, that's always something to take into account for. But to be fair, like his accuracy isn't perfect. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He's tries to rely a little bit too much on his athleticism, which won't fly in the NFL. And I mean, he falls in that same category of a couple other guys who takes sacks because he tries to do a little bit too much and that kind of thing. So I think he's a good quarterback. I think a career backup is a really good projection for him. Um, and I'd be interested to see who ends up taking him, where he ends up going, because I couldn't see him sliding past the third round. But there was a couple other quarterback scouting that we did where I was really a big fan of some of those quarterbacks that didn't go into the fifth or sixth round. So I don't think he'd go past the third round, but we'd have to see how everything falls.
These are just what we see on field. And we've been wrong before. Remember the first time we did this, we were
Oh my
so
gosh,
wrong.
yeah, we were so wrong.
Oh my!
The
I
first
mean,
time
we
we had
thought
it was
Mitchell Trubisky would be a decent quarterback in the NFL.
I liked what he brought to the table in terms of scouting. And I mean, to be fair, we weren't the only ones who were wrong about
Oh,
him because he was the first one taken. Um, but
I still felt like Deshaun Watson was better than Trubisky, but then again, I had Trubisky over Mahomes.
right. No, I think Deshaun Watson, absolutely. Like looking back, it's easy to say Deshaun Watson over Mitchell Trubisky and then Mahomes over both of them. But I guess I just got so spooked by the arm strength concern of Deshaun Watson that I forgot that he won a national championship and he was like this uber successful quarterback. I just kind of ignored that because I was like, oh, he has got a weak arm, but I mean, he doesn't really.
Well, well, let's not forget. I mean, you got guys like Kurt Warner and Tom Brady. They don't have the strongest arms, so maybe arm strength is one of the more overrated aspects of a quarterback. And I think that's true because take a look at guys like Jamarcus Russell and everybody's favorite in Baltimore, Kyle Bowler, that had
Right.
two of the strongest arms you ever saw, but they had no control.
Just because you can throw 50 yards from your knees doesn't mean you're going to be a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Although the thing is, arm strength isn't something you can teach. So when you have a guy who has it, it's pretty important, but it's not the most important. If they're able to do a lot of other things really well, then arm strength isn't necessarily the top trait you look for.
All right. So we were talking about this earlier. Last year, we talked about some other quarterbacks that intrigued us, but this year, yeah, there's not a lot after those five. There's Carson Strong, who I definitely feel like is going to be drafted at some point. I just don't know where. But after that, I don't know who is considered a draftable prospect. I mean, you look at this, you have Bailey Zapp from Western Kentucky, kind of played an air raid offense. EJ Perry from Brown, he's gotten some looks by some players, by some teams. My bad. Jack Cohn from Notre Dame, and a bunch of other guys that probably are not going to hear their name called come draft day. But yeah, I mean, look, we've heard 2013. I think it's fair with this quarterback class. There's just not a whole lot really that you can talk about after those five and Carson Strong.
Right. I think after those five, Carson Strong is probably the top of the list. I think he's easily number 6. I have a hard time seeing him go higher than round 4.
Yeah.
He has a lot of concerns in terms of mobility, his injury history. I mean, he brings some good things to the table, so I definitely think he's going to get drafted. But he does have some concerns that will make him fall to a day 3.
Yeah.
Billy Zapp out of that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. The question with Strong is it's not whether he's going to be drafted, it's whether he'll last in this league at all. And you just don't know.
Right. And then when you look at Billy Zapp, I mean, he after Carson Strong, maybe he's a 6th or a 7th round guy. He's had great success, but he was playing at Kentucky in an air raid offense. So
Western Kentucky.
Western Kentucky. I knew it was Western Kentucky.
Yeah, and I don't know too many air raid guys that have made an impact in the league other than Gardner Minshew.
Right. He's the only one. And I mean, he has the same issues that every air raid quarterback ends up coming out with, which is interesting that all of these air raid guys don't have a great arm, they're not necessarily the best passers, yet he came out and he threw nearly 6,000 yards last season, 60 touchdowns. I mean, his stats are out of this world, but he just does. I don't think he's necessarily an top line NFL. He might have a great career in the XFL or USFL. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, but he's definitely
maybe even the CFL. Who knows?
Maybe even the CFL. that could be a possibility. I can see Billy Zapp getting drafted. I just don't have much high expectations for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and EJ Perry from Brown, like I said, he's someone that I've heard from NFL.com, but I mean, he was from an Ivy League school, so we know he's a smart guy. It's just we don't know too much about some of these guys. We really don't. And then, like I said, Jack Cohn from Notre Dame, I believe he was a transfer from Wisconsin, doesn't really scream NFL quarterback to me. So it's really tough to figure out who is going to be drafted after those six guys. And that's the hard part.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if none of them end up getting drafted.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Because this draft class, I mean, it's such a deep draft class and so many positions that I feel like teams are going to be like, well, why are we taking a quarterback when we have this guy who could have gone third round last year available in the fifth round right now? So,
and then you also have to factor in that the 23 class could have Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and somebody else that could just jump out of nowhere, because that always happens.
That always happens, right?
I mean, who was it? It was Zach Wilson the year before, and this year it's Kenny Pickett.
Joe Burrow the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his first season with LSU, you wouldn't think he was going to end up being the best college quarterback passing of all time and go first overall. And then he did. I mean, so there's always going to be somebody who ends up having an incredible season. So I think teams are definitely hedging their bets and waiting until 23 to take a guy, unless they feel like they won't be in a position to draft somebody. And I feel like somebody like the Eagles right now, if Jalen Hurts doesn't have a great season, then they have all these draft picks that they can use to move up and that kind of thing. But like the Lions aren't necessarily going to be in a position to make big moves if they're outside of there. So they might go ahead and try and take a quarterback now. The Steelers are always in a win now mode. So
wait, aren't the Lions going to have 2 first-round picks in 2023?
Are they going to have the Rams?
Yeah, they should, because Stafford, they gave up 2 first-round picks in 22-23. So they should have 2 first-round picks.
You might be right. I didn't realize it was 2 first-round picks,
yeah.
But either way, it depends. They might
Dolphins as well. They have 2 first-round picks in 23 because of the 49er trade. Well, right now, let's go through each team and figure out who we think could take a quarterback in this draft. And let's start with the East Division. So in the AFC East, I think you can pretty much say nobody's going to take a quarterback high in this draft. Maybe the Dolphins when the offseason started, but that Tyreek Hill trade just proved they think Tua can be the guy, and he may end up being the guy with a guy like Tyreek Hill. Look what Stephon Diggs did for Josh Allen. Maybe we'll see a similar thing. But if he doesn't work out, and that's why I love the trade by the Dolphins, because they have the 29th overall pick in the first round. They get a guy like Tyreek Hill, who has been an all-pro in this league, has worked well with multiple quarterbacks, mind you, because he's had his breakout season with Alex Smith, and then Patrick Mahomes took over. So if that works out for the Dolphins, that's going to be great. And if it doesn't work out, they have the draft capital to move up.
Right.
Or maybe they'll already be there.
Jets definitely not. Patriots not. They both have their quarterback for the next 2 or 3 seasons, even if they don't work out. Dolphins, no. Bills
maybe
not.
A backup for the Bills, maybe a backup later, but
maybe late.
But
AFC East, no. AFC North, the Steelers can take a quarterback this year.
I think with the Steelers, that could be Malik Willis's spot. You can definitely see the Steelers do that. Everybody else, no. I mean, everybody else has their quarterback and everybody else has their backup. I mean, in the South, Texans, I just don't see
the Browns just got Deshaun Watson. How could I forget that?
Yeah. Texans, I don't see it. I don't see it with the Texans.
No, I think I wouldn't rule it out, but I would make it, to me, it's highly, highly unlikely. I think they'd rather just roll with Davis Mills for another year. Then
see how that works out. And again, they'll have 2 first-round picks in 23. So that'll work out for them. Indianapolis, who the picked it. Oh, Matt Ryan. So
They have Matt Ryan.
maybe
They
a guy in the
could.
second round. Wait, do they have a second round pick?
I'm not sure. I think they might, but they don't. I don't think it's worth. I think it's better for them to just wait till next year to take a
Yeah,
quarterback.
probably
than
wait. I mean,
waste the
Jaguars,
second
they
round pick.
Jaguars drafted Trevor Lawrence. That's not happening. And then
Right.
Titans, they still have Ryan Tannehill. That's not happening
They
either.
still have Ryan Tannehill. I could imagine them maybe drafting a second round quarterback.
Yeah, maybe. But
And have him develop a little bit underneath Ryan Tannehill, because Ryan Tannehill won't be there forever.
yeah.
But it seems all signs point to them sticking with Ryan Tannehill for the near future. Because I mean, they're a competitive team. They were the first seed in the AFC this past season. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Ryan Tannehill is a bad quarterback. So, I
And then,
don't think
Oh.
maybe second round.
Yeah, maybe. And then down in the West, no. I mean,
Nah, I
you
think they're
have
all
Russell
set.
Wilson, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. All four of those guys could potentially have great seasons this year.
Right. I think the only guy, Derek Carr, is the worst of that group.
And Derek Carr is a Pro Bowler.
He's solidly their starting quarterback in Las Vegas.
And he's part of the reason why they made the playoffs. He's part of the reason why they've been in that playoff picture the last few seasons. And I've been trying to tell people that, and nobody wants to listen.
No, I think Derek Carr is absolutely underrated.
Yeah.
And he's a good quarterback with the Raiders.
Now in the NFC, that's a completely different story. Now let's go over all of this. So in the NFC East, let's see. You have the Cowboys. They just signed Dak Prescott to a big contract. That's not happening. You have the Giants. Well, they're giving Daniel Jones another season. I don't think that's happening. Yeah, the Eagles. They could, but I think they want to give Jalen Hurts one more season because he has done some good things. Maybe he just needs another year to really break out like Josh Allen did. But
right, I agree with all of that.
And then the Commanders, who I know they just got Carson Wentz, but I mean, don't forget when the Bears signed Mike Glennon and nobody thought they were going to take Mitchell Trubisky, and then they took Mitchell Trubisky. So we could see a surprise there. They could be the team to get Kenny Pickett. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Commanders take a quarterback.
And that's still a stupid name.
Oh, absolutely. I think it'd be very Commanders, a Washington football team, whatever type move to take a quarterback. I think the Giants are wrong for sticking with Daniel Jones, but I mean, they're sticking with Daniel Jones. So I can't imagine that they're going to pick another quarterback who's potentially a developmental quarterback when Daniel Jones is their other option. I can't imagine that happens. Jalen Hurts, I think he's a good quarterback in my mind. I don't think he's necessarily a guy that needs to be replaced right away, but I can imagine that if a situation comes up that they could move on.
Yeah.
And then, Dak Prescott, he's not going anywhere for the Cowboys.
Yeah. All right. Now let's take a look at the NFC North. Well, we know the Bears are not taking one because they just got Justin Fields.
Right.
The Vikings, they still have Kirk Cousins. That's not happening.
Right. They're not going to take a quarterback.
The Packers, well, we all know what's going on there, so they're not going to add on to that craziness. But the Lions could definitely take a quarterback, not at number 2, but at number 32 to get the 5th-year option. That's where we could see a guy like Matt Corral or a guy like Desmond Ridder go if the Lions feel like that would be worth the pick.
Yeah, I think 32 is definitely a spot they could take a quarterback. Again, that 5th-year option is really important.
Yeah, and that's why I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with that. You think he's going to be a franchise, get that 5th-year option. Go ahead.
Right. I can imagine that. I don't think so. I don't think this will happen. I can imagine that they trade back. I don't think they will. I think it's most likely they stick at 2. But if they could trade back, and depending on where they land, they might be in a position to take a quarterback wherever they end up trading back to.
And this is all dependent on if the Lions are interested in one of these quarterbacks, because we just don't know.
Right. I like Dan Campbell. I like the situation they have, but I think they're in for a little bit longer of a haul. So
yeah, they are.
I don't think they're necessarily going to try and take a quarterback this year and accelerate that rebuilding, because once you get that quarterback on the rookie contract, that's really that first year is when you're looking to start becoming competitive
Mhm.
because you only have 4 years on a really cheap contract and then that fifth year on a average on a decent contract. So
Yeah.
taking a quarterback this year, I don't think their team is ready to start that process. I think next year is much more likely for them to go with a quarterback.
All right, let's move on to the NFC South. Uh, let's see. So we have the Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Buccaneers. Let's just eliminate the Buccaneers right now since they just got Tom Brady back. The Saints, I could definitely see them, especially with those 2 first-round picks, but maybe they're just doing that because to get more depth. Because we said before, this is a good depth class, and that might be why they made the trade, not necessarily to get a quarterback, because they didn't really have to make that trade to do that. So that's
Right.
probably just to build a team. Carolina, we could definitely see doing that. I think it would be a mistake because I just don't see a quarterback worth taking at number 6. And I don't think Carolina has the teams to succeed right now. I think they should build the team and then wait, because it's going to be another long season for Carolina, in my opinion. I think they're going to be right back up there next year. Atlanta, I don't know what they're going to do, but I think it's another case where build the team first, then get your future. But
No,
they could definitely take a quarterback. I wouldn't be
I
surprised.
agree. I don't think the Saints made that trade for a quarterback because it's way too early in the offseason to have made, well, not it's not really early in the offseason anymore, but
Yeah.
it's too far from the draft to to make that move for a specific player in mind.
Yeah.
So I think that trade was more so just to get first round picks, to get first round talent, because they're definitely lacking some talent, but that's a division that I think maybe not necessarily super competitive for the first spot, but second spot is definitely up in the air. So if they can compete this year, they could sneak into the playoffs. So I
And
think
with the
that's
way
more of a
the NFC is this year, I mean, we could see a team with a losing record get a wild card spot. And
right.
that's not an exaggeration. I really think we could, because of all the moves that have happened. Basically, all the good quarterbacks have left the NFC except for 3.
Yeah, except for like three. I mean,
Okay. Okay. A little more than 3, but you get the point.
but yeah, most teams in the NFC have some questions at quarterback.
Yeah.
So the Saints can definitely build their team a little bit more. So I don't think they're going to be taking a quarterback this year. The Bucks, I think they could go maybe a second round and be like, hey,
So they
let's get
already
a
used the
guy.
second round pick on Kyle Trask. I mean,
That's
would you
true.
really
That's true.
do
They
back
probably
to back second round picks a
no, they
quarterback?
won't.
I wouldn't.
I forgot about Kyle Trask. I'm not a huge fan of him in the first place, but I think they wouldn't. Why would you take another quarterback? They
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. The Falcons, again, it's another situation where it's going to be wait till next year again, start
Yeah.
building the team a little bit more. And then the Panthers, I think they can. I think it's pretty realistic that they take a quarterback.
I definitely think
And
it's
here's
realistic.
why. I think because I think Matt Rule is not necessarily a lame duck coach, but everyone has a pretty much understanding that this is probably going to be his last season. So when you have when you have an organization and you're moving on, a way you can try and get job security is to take a developmental quarterback. And if he does pretty well with you guys, and even say you go 6-11 or 7-10 or something like that, but you show improvements with this rookie quarterback, it at least buys you some more leash to kind of move on a little bit. It did not work out with Matt Nagy and the Bears last year, taking
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields, who is a much better prospect than any of these guys. But it's something that can happen. So I think they're definitely on board with taking a quarterback this year. Um, I think that would fall in line with kind of their organizational thinking.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, like wasn't a great move to trade for Sam Darnold,
Yeah.
so they could try and convince themselves that one of these quarterbacks can save all of their jobs. That's just how I see it.
Yeah. And then in the NFC West, Arizona, despite all the drama with Kyler Murray, that's not happening. Neither is the Rams. They just won a Super Bowl with oh my God, with Matthew Stafford. Who am I missing? 49ers, they
And
have Trey
extended Matt
Lance.
Stafford.
Oh, yeah, and extended Matt Stafford. Thank you. 49ers, I know the whole thing with Jimmy G, but they have their starting quarterback in place. And then Seattle could, but I think they're going to go defense in the first round, in my opinion. I think they're going to go defense.
This draft, there's quite a few teams who have just started their rebuild.
Yeah.
And as we said earlier, when you take that quarterback, you accelerate your rebuild phase to start
Yeah.
becoming competitive. So teams like Seattle and the Falcons, teams like that who don't have the team around a rookie quarterback to accelerate that rebuilding phase, it doesn't make sense for them to take a quarterback. So I can't see the Seattle Seahawks taking a quarterback when they're actively tearing down their team to get younger for a future push.
And again, I think they're going to go defense in the first round just because that's where the depth in this draft is going to be, especially edge, defensive line, corner could definitely go one of those positions. I think that's where they're going to go. And really, we're talking about teams could wait till 2023. Well, we could see teams wait till 2024. That's just how these rebuilds are going to go. And this is just if I was a GM, I'm not saying that's what these teams are going to do. If I was a GM, I would make sure that the team is built and then I want to take a quarterback. That's kind of what Cleveland did a few years ago, 2017. They had 3 first-round picks. Everybody thought they could probably take a quarterback. They did not. They took Myles Garrett first overall. That was the right move. Myles Garrett is one of the best defensive ends in this league, and it helped Cleveland get back to the playoffs for the first time since 2002 and win a playoff game for the first time since 1994 or 95. It was a 94 season, but in 95, right. What? It doesn't matter. It was the right move for Cleveland, even though they ended up taking Baker Mayfield, who I thought was better than what people gave him credit for. But what do I know?
I'm with you on Baker Mayfield. I think he's better than people.
You know what? I think whoever he goes to next, if he ends up starting for them, don't be surprised if he plays some of the best football of his career. If he ends up starting.
I agree. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's definitely a starter.
Yeah.
And I think he deserved the opportunity to not have a guy come in and compete.
Yeah,
but that's a whole different story.
That's a whole different story. I'm just going to give the short end version just because I want to get this off my chest. This was the biggest risk the Browns have ever pulled. And if it does not work out, this sets them back years.
Oh, yeah.
Not just 1 or 2, at least 5, because of everything that they gave up and just pissing off Baker Mayfield.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to work out for Cleveland. I know everybody's excited. I don't know if it will.
I'm with you on that one. Deshaun Watson is a good talent. I'll hold my personal feelings aside for it. He's a good talent, but the team itself on offense, I mean, they have Nick Chubb and
Kareem Hunt.
Sorry, I was blanking on his name. They have a great running attack with those 2 guys, but they got rid of Jarvis Landry. They brought in Amari
Cooper, but that's about it.
It's more of a lateral move, maybe a half step better. Amari Cooper is a really good receiver, but Jarvis Landry was a good receiver.
Jarvis Landry is a Pro Bowler.
Right. He's one of my favorite route runners in the league right now. So I don't know. I have personal feelings for it. Plus, I'm a Ravens fan, so I'm already biased against the Browns. So I would love to see this blow up in their face.
Oh yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see Deshaun Watson end up with a suspension, even though the criminal court didn't move forward.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see him with a suspension.
Yeah. All right. Before we go on for another hour talking about this, let's cut the video right here. Sam, thank you for joining me. And
thanks
don't worry, guys. I will have my mock draft up before the draft. So don't worry. We are going to be working on that very hard now. Isn't that right?
Oh, absolutely.
But we can't tell you this. Who goes first overall?
We got Aiden Hutchinson first overall.
So you guys will get that. Now, who else is going in the first round? You're just going to have to wait and see. All right, guys. See you next time.